Our second speaker this afternoon is Martin Hirsch, Curator of the Staatliche Münzsammlung in Munich. And Martin's paper, Papal Medals and the Interplay of Prints, Paintings and Numismatics, is up now. Please join me in welcoming Martin to the podium.
I thank you for inviting me to the Frick collection very much. And I will give you a panorama about papal medals from the 15th to the 17th century. And this is close to a study or to a work which I'm doing for my museum in Munich. And maybe as well for in combination with colleagues in Rome, that we have the exhibition there, in order to make an exhibition on papal medals which show the architecture of Rome from the 15th to the 17th century. I give you a panorama of the many things we have found so far, and so if we are here in a music hall, I would say I play every key on the piano. It's not just a concise paper I have, so I give you much more an open view on diverse things. When we remember foreign cities, we use photographs as a memory to memorize them. In the life of the people of earlier times, coins and particular medals played an important role in the propaganda of buildings. Thus, under Paul V Borghese, who completed the facade of St. Peter in Rome, a medal was made by Paolo San Quirico in 1608, showing the building, and here is a detail of it. How different these images are, one sees when one tries to compare the two directly. Surely not every detail is recognizable, but a small metal relief shows the building not only in its outline shape, but also the remarkable appearance of the colossal columns, the attic, and the attic sculptures which were still missing at that date, and the design of the cupola. The Roman culture has a chapter in the history of medals, the meaning of which is still far from being fully known and explored. Since the 1470s, the popes have repeatedly made medals that praised their government. At the beginning, the medals were related to individual events. In the course of the 16th century, however, a tradition arose in which medals were produced year after year. The occasions offered jubilee years, the opening of the Porta Sancta, peace celebration, for which a separate circle of images existed, and more, the new buildings of the city and the church state. If the plan for a new building was taken, when the foundation stone was laid, or when the building in progress was to be celebrated, medals were often made since the second half of the 16th century. From the construction work of St. Peter and on other churches, to the design of places and the displacement of the obelisks, the renewal of the city fortifications to the papal port of Civitavecchia, a wide circle of pictures arose. It appears as an art historical treasure of pictures what the papal medal art has produced. No other Italian dynasty and no kingdom have succeeded in perpetuating their residence or territory in such continuity and variety on medals. Here is just an overview of the medals on the construction of St. Peter's, beginning with the choir under Paul II, upper left, around 1470, and the designs of Bramante and San Gallo, and ending with Pope Paul V Borghese, who saw the completion of the facade after the plan of Maderno. We know from several sources for what purposes the medals were used by the popes. Pope Paul II, for example, threw coins from his palace to the people gathered there before, the nowadays known Palazzo Venezia. And he thus followed the tradition of the Roman emperors and their largitio of throwing coins to the people. The throwing of coins is also attested from the Loggia di Benedizione of the Lateran Basilica on the occasion of the Possesso celebrations in the late 17th century. These Possesso celebrations were the inauguration masses for the popes. In the late 16th century, medals were often presented at the possessor celebration inside the Lateran Church to the assembled cardinals, high officials of the church state, and ambassadors. Against 1600, even the number of orders is known for the possessor celebration. They initially show 70, I give some examples, 27 gold medals and 30 silver medals. In many cases, the persons who received the gift are mentioned by name. And in this way, the medal finds its way into the area of the court history of the popes and their diplomacy. An interesting field of study, for example, is Pope Clement X, who donated 12 medals in gold and 12 in silver at the possessor celebration to Christina of Sweden, who in these years lived in Rome and who converted to the Catholic belief. This fact is interpreted in the research on Christina of Sweden not only as a gift, but as a financial contribution to her. For the Popes Innocent XI and Alexander VIII in the late 17th century, the production of 100 gold medals and 100 silver medals is reported. Again, the high proportion of gold medals is noticeable. Only very few of these specimens are preserved today. Diplomats write also about medals from abroad, from other countries, as gifts to noblemen such as the King of England. In fact, the papal medal can be addressed as a special form within the medal art. The popes preferred the technique of using dies for struck medals early, perhaps since the introduction of new techniques by Benvenuto Cellini in the papal Zecca in the late 1520s. This involved the production of smaller scale medals in comparison to the cast medals. The greatest advantage of the use of dies was that it was possible to reach larger numbers than in casts. The second peculiarity of the papal medal is that by reusing the same portrait types, the side of the portrait became more and more stereotype, and more diverse, at least in my eyes, is the pictorial art on the reverse on the medals, which becomes the interesting part of this medium. A lot of experimentation was done with the architectural presentation. We know the facade as well as perspective views, interior views, and architectural sections. Moreover, in the early model period, there have been a variety of phenomena that cannot be addressed as a general stylistic development of the Pope's medals, but which has always been strongly dependent on the intentions of the popes and the abilities of the artists. So we have in this field a long history with a very diverse chapters. With regard to these 6 medals shown here, it was stated that there was a gradual path in the 16th century which led to more and more exact medal images. If there is still a tendency towards simplification in the early years, in the 2 early examples, the medalist has reached later a level which had been working with precision since the time of the papacy of Gregory XIII. It's around 1575 or so, which reminds us these medals of this time very close to graphic art. Now I have give you some examples of papal medals and talk about them here. In order to look how these architectures fit in the art of showing architectures in the same time in other mediums. Through the exemplary seizing of some architectural medals, the development of architectural images is investigated in the direction of the role of antique coins and on other side of the architectural representations of the time. In his time as a cardinal, Pietro Barbo began a palace in Rome, and being elected in 1464 as Pope Paul II, he wished this palace, and he wished this palace, you see on the right, to be the seat of the papal government. Even as a cardinal, he created a medal on the construction of this place. So we have this medal not only with the avers mentioning the Pope, but in his time as a cardinal as well. Comparing the present palace with the medal, one can see how few consistencies exist between the medal image and the today's building. Explaining the differences is a key task in dealing with the architectural medals. Today, only to a few connoisseurs of Roman architecture known is that the Palazzo Venezia had a predecessor building, you see in black. Pietro Barbo had begun in smaller dimensions. The building here in black, which is clearly smaller, can be recognized today in the foundation walls by architectural archaeologists. If this reconstruction is approached, at least the proportion of the palace on the medal can be explained. For other questions, such as how many towers had the first palace and whether it still had Gothic window shapes, like on the medal, proofs are missing. Here, the medal image is today the only starting point for reflections. It could indeed be the actual exterior of the first palace, which is shown, or an incomplete plan, or a free imagination of the medalist. How should one think about these medals? It is striking that the small bronze medal in its dimension and its appearance corresponds approximately to the appearance of ancient coins like the sesterce. The idea is plausible that the comparatively coarse style of the architectural picture is derived from models of the architectural representation on the great Roman emperor's coins. A different dimension, indeed, is given for the arrangement of the palace image on the medal. However, if one recognizes that it is shown in a perspective with a side view, and I like to show this. There's a pointer here, I guess. Here, I tried so. That you see some. Here is towers from, and this line you see. There's a slightly a perspective in this. A side view as well as a perspective reproduced in the base and on top on the towers. The tendency to invent such a perspective on the earliest architectural medal of the papacy is probably to be interpreted in the light of the Italian architectural representation of the early Renaissance. Here to see the so-called Città Ideale, this piece in Baltimore. If a palace with a similar perspective is placed on this fine-lined architecture picture next to the medal image, it can be seen that the medalist was also concerned about the view, so appreciated in the art of the time with a perspective view. If we go 100 years further to Pope Sixtus V and his medal with the representations of churches and new streets in Rome, we stand before a particularly independent work by Domenico Poggini from 1587. Here the city of Rome is made visible with many imagination, in which churches represented by their patrons and obelisks are shown individually. Santa Maria Maggiore is located in the center, and on the left is Santa Trinità dei Monti, San Lorenzo follows, then Santa Croce in Jerusalem, presented by an obelisk which was meant to be placed there, and San Giovanni in Laterano with St. John on the right. As well, the connecting roads between these churches are entered. Under Pope Sixtus V, the papal medals with architectural images had a completely different appearance, as the Pope did not place individual monuments, but road access connecting the city space and the obelisk, which had been replaced in the great places, become the focus of his propaganda. A similar tendency is also recognizable in the wall paintings and graphics in the time of Sixtus V, as in these frescoes of the late 1580s in the Salone Sistino in the Apostolic Library. The comparison of medals and graphic art shows a gradual approximation of the means of presentation since about this time. The medal made by Giovanni Meloni in 1575 on Cardinal Alessandro Farnese's construction of the Gesù Church in Rome, for example, can be seen with a slightly later woodcut of the facade in the Rome guide Le cose meravigliose dell'Alma città di Roma by Girolamo Franzini, which was edited in Venice 1588. The consistency does not only affect the appearance, but also the coarser style seen on the cast medal as on the woodcut. An analogous example, but not now at a higher artistic level, is provided by a medal created by Gaspare Morone Mola for Pope Alexander VII in 1658 with the facade of Santa Maria della Pace. The medal can be seen as a highlight which in the Baroque period could be achieved in this medium. Both spatial effects such as the forward and rearward parts of the building as well as the way the architect Pietro da Cortona made designs for this new facade are now more or less recognizable. So in this time, I would say one can even divide some architecture or really the master. You can see much closer how these medals were and the way these medals are made. So they are very close to the real appearance of the building. How close the level of the medalists has approached that of printing graphics is illustrated by another example of this time. If, again, the medal is mirrored on the axis, the paragone shows how close medalists could have reached the art of the etchings in their time. It is understandable that as a result of the multitude of works of such quality, architectural medallions have become a collection object. An early praise of the architecture medals can be found in Johann Gröning's German book Historio Numismatico Critica, or Recent History of Modern Medals, in which the German author praises the architecture medals, among other things, that they present buildings to the viewers who could otherwise be little in public memory. So he says that the medal is an important medium to remember architectures. Now to the collection of papal medals in their time. The history of the collection of papal medals can be traced far back. The collections in Rome itself provide the best field of investigation. For the Farnese family, Fulvio Orsini has since 1565 played a major role as an antiquarian who supervised the collection and served Cardinal Alessandro Farnese. He arranged the coin cabinet and worked as a consultant. Around 1578, he wrote an inventory of the medals that they were then housed in a mezzanine floor of the Palazzo Farnese. This slide shows a furniture called studiolo, in which many ancient coins and gems, as well modern medals, have been collected. The key reference to the collection is a drawing of the furniture, which was placed on the first page on this inventory in Naples. It is stated in the inventory that ancient Greek and Roman coins were kept in the upper compartment, each of which again was filled with 7 trays, of these smaller compartments, 7 trays, in which the coins were separated of the medals gold, silver, and bronze. For the modern medals, the description of the lower zone with the 3 subdivisions, which are called vano, so these 3 down here, is important. In these lower compartments, on the left was a book on Trajan's column, the Latin letters of Pope Paul III, as well as drawings and miniatures. The middle compartment contained a variety of things, such as vases and an ivory skeleton, as well as a large number of coins and medals, including astrological coins, medals of the popes and cardinals, among them the Farnese family itself. The archaeological writings of Piero Ligorio were kept in the right compartment. Ligorio was one of the best-known Roman antique connoisseurs who, with the help of Roman coins, developed a plan of Rome with its ancient buildings. Ligorio was also a friend of Fulvio Orsini, who helped him remaining in the Eternal City. Once Ligorio wrote to Antonio Agustin, "If we lose Piero from Rome, little more will remain there." Orsini, on the other hand, helped Ligorio and urged Alessandro Farnese to acquire his writings. The existence of the Ligorio writings in the cabinet appears as an important indication that Fulvio Orsini was the leader in the furnishing of the furniture. The inventory in Naples is almost certainly to be referred to a large piece of furniture which is now preserved in France. It was possibly made by family. I give you a next here. In France, it was possibly made by Flaminio Boulanger, a cabinet maker known in Rome for his coffered ceilings. And this is the oldest known coin furniture in Rome. The magnificent cabinet with the coat of arms of the Farnese has its prominence from the Farnese Palace and is now in the Musée de la Renaissance in Écouen. The cabinet is similar to a triumphal arch or palace front and shows many parallels to the drawing on the inventory. The collection of the Farnese, preserved in the cabinet, has a significance in the history of collecting because it gives a link between the coins of ancient and modern times, and because the 3 lower compartments with writings of the Farnese Pope, Piero Ligorio, and the medals of the Farnese show something like a family treasure which was apparently brought together by an intellectual Fulvio Orsini to this splendid ensemble. How diverse coins and on other small items could be collected and presented is evident from another document of Alessandro Farnese. He had a consultant in Girolamo Garimberto, who in 1566 wrote a letter that Alessandro should set up a studiolo in his government, the Palazzo della Cancelleria, which was not done afterwards. The letter of Garimberto gives the design for a very different studiolo. I quote, "For both public and private pleasure and for your own recreation, I think it would be a great pleasure for you in the Cancelleria if you made a studiolo with all your small objects such as medals, cameos, inkstands and clocks." End quote. It should contain statuettes and precious works of treasure like the Casetta Farnese in niches or tabernacles. Quote, "You could have a fine cornice running around the interior wall with marble figurines." Finally, Garimberto praises this studiolo as for its unusualness, so by gathering together an ensemble of so many gems and objects of extraordinary beauty and richness. Comparing now the Farnese cabinet in Écouen to Garimberti's description, it is striking that Orsini wanted to know the collection well ordered behind numerous closed doors, while Garimberto meant a study in which Cardinal Alessandro and his visitors could see a selected number of objects and be impressed by and delighted by its splendor. Thus, in the field of numismatics in Rome in this time, around 1570, 1580, the collection type of a study collection can be distinguished in 2 diverse directions. The Barberini family is also known for its coin cabinets. The most spectacular is probably that of the Chicago Art Institute, which shows the Barberini coat of arms with cardinal head in the middle, its fine-cut architectural elements on the front, the coat of arms suggested and has on the front. This coat of arms in research is used as a reference to Cardinal Maffeo Barberini, who was elected Pope in 1623 and later named Urban VIII. In this cabinet, the coins were not only collocated in the corpus, but as well in the stairs down there. We know that even the provenance of medals was noticed early in inventories in Italy. For example, Francesco Borromini, in the inventory of Francesco Borromini is mentioned una medaglia del deposito di Michelangelo Buonarroti. Maybe it was even one of these portrait medals we have seen in the morning. I come to the end. Because the numismatic study rooms are no longer preserved, this is the Museo Pio Clementino in the Vatican Palace. I come to it. Because the numismatic study rooms are no longer preserved in the Roman palaces, which are now largely altered in their interior, the Sala in the Museo Pio Clementino in the Vatican Palace could be used as a proof. For this marble-paneled room, Luigi Valadier designed around the years 1770-80 4 pieces of furniture for coins and small objects. Facing back to the 17th century, large collections of Pope medals can already be found in Rome. One was owned of Cassiano dal Pozzo in his palace in Via dei Chiavari. This is extensive collection, which is known through inventories, seem to have housed coins in cassettini and in the presses with its large stock of numerically listed coins and medals of the popes, from the Middle Ages to Pope Clement XI. In contrast to smaller other Roman collections, a wealth pontifical papal collections can be found here. From some popes, the family owned up to 50 or 40 pieces of medals and coins. And clearly in the direction of the medals, and even more in the direction of the architectural medals, some indicate some entries that are mentioning medaglie fondamentali di varie chiese and also medaglie fondamentali diverse. In this collection is also mentioned Pisanello's Paleologus medal and the early Heraclius medal, which is shown as well in the Stephen Scher collection here in the house. And also we have departments of cardinals and of painters and architects and sculptures. The House of Pozzo, with its extensive collections of antiquities, was open to artists of the time for studying. Giovanni Pietro Bellori emphasizes his importance in 1672 when he writes that the painter Nicolas Poussin frequently studied in Pozzo's house and therefore must be called in his art a pupil of the house and the museum of Cavaliere dal Pozzo. The assumption was made that the medalist Gaspare Mola also worked in the house, and Mola is created both a medal for Carlo Antonio and Cassiano dal Pozzo. Gaspare Mola owned the largest collection of papal medal dies and also a large collection of Pope medals. The latter is particularly evident in the fact that Filippo Bonanni, who presented a complete book of the papal medals in 1699, most frequently points to the collection of Mola. In my panorama I gave you today, I was concerned about the specific genre of the papal medals, then of the first use of the foundation medals and the use of them in the possessor masses, then on the possibility of working with these medals inside the field of architecture, of etchings and in paintings as well, and at last to focus on the second use of the history of collecting, on the collezionismo, which is another step which has not so much been begun in the time before. So this is a fascinating culture of the medal, which I'm like to show you, and I think there's many ways we can study them in Rome, in archives and in museums and in libraries as well. I thank you.